Hey, good morning, 6th through 8th graders. So glad that you decided to join us this morning for MSM Sunday morning service. Hey, if this is your first time, we're really glad that you decided to be here. And in case we've never met before, my name is JD. I'm the Student Ministries Director here, and we are in a series that we are calling Epic. And Epic is a series that's all about having a story that's worth telling. You see, every single one of us is going to live out this story. At the end of our lives, we're going to have a story to tell, but the truth is that only a few of us are going to have a story that's actually worth telling. And so the idea that we are talking about in this series is that, you know what, how do we live an epic story? How do we when we get to the end of our lives be able to say, you know what, I'm glad that I'm here, and people around me are glad that I'm here, and God would be pleased with what I have done in my life. And so today I want to wrap up with this one thought, and I'm going to keep it real short and sweet and to the point, because I want to give you lots of time in your small group time today to be able to do something a little bit different than what we would normally do. And today I want to talk about the fact that we are called to build our story on something bigger. And that something bigger is Jesus Christ. Is this idea that, you know what, we are going to build the foundation of our lives on something. And the something that we need to build our lives on is on the rock of Jesus Christ. And when I say the rock of Jesus Christ, I get this idea from a place where he talks in Matthew. It's from Matthew 24, where Jesus is talking to a group of people, and he says this. He says, "Therefore, everyone who hears these words of mine and puts them into practice is like a wise man who built his house on the rock. The rain came down, and the streams rose up, and the winds blew and beat against the house, and yet it did not fall, because it had its foundation on the rock. But everyone who hears these words of mine and does not put them into practice is like a foolish man who built his house on the sand. The rain came down, and the streams rose up and blew and beat against the house, and it fell with a great crash." So here we have these two different types of people. We have this person who builds their house on the rock, and those who build their house on the sand. And so what I want to ask you is your house built on the rock, or is it built on sand? Because it doesn't matter how successful your life is. You could go and be the CEO of some huge company, or become a Major League Baseball player, or some sort of professional athlete. And I can tell you this, that in the end, if your house is built on the sand, meaning that you don't have Jesus as the foundation of your life, then it will, the rains, they will come up and they will wash what you thought was an epic story away. However, if you live your life and build your house on the rock of Jesus Christ, meaning that you have him as the center of your life, meaning that you put your trust and your faith in him, and that you know no matter what that he is with you, that it doesn't matter what you do in this life, I promise you that you will live a story that is worth telling, an epic story. And so what I want to challenge you to do as we wrap up this series is to live an epic story. Is to live a story that is worth telling in the end. But the only way you're going to be able to do that is if you build your house on the rock of Jesus Christ. Now, what I want you to do is I want you in just a moment to go ahead and jump into your small groups. If this is your first time here, there's going to be someone that's going to come forward, and they're going to help you find a small group that you can be a part of. But for those of you who are already in a small group, you're going to find your leaders as soon as I'm done, and you're going to go ahead and jump into your small groups. But instead of doing small groups the typical way that we do it, where we would have you answer questions and you would talk about the things that you learned about in the message, instead, what I want you to do is I want you to take the poster story postcards, the stickers, and I want you to begin to think through the different ways that God has already worked in your life, and the stories that you can think of how he is moving and working and has moved and worked in your life in the various areas that we talked about. Now, on that poster story postcard are 5 different parts of a story. And I want to share those with you. The first part is the characters. So who are the characters of the story that you're about to tell? Now, this story does not need to be some sort of novel. It just needs to be something that is just a couple of sentences in each little block that is provided for you. So who are the characters? Who are the people involved in the story that you're telling? What's the setting? In other words, where did this story take place? The third point is the plot. what is the plot of the story? What were the main events that led into the problem or the conflict, which is the next part? What was the conflict? In other words, when did things really start to go bad for you in a certain area of your life? And then the last thing is, what is the resolution? Or really what I want you to figure out is, where did you see God show up in your life? You see, for many of you, this won't be difficult, because you're going to say, you know what, I have seen God show up in the different hashtags that we have outside the warehouse. I've seen God show up in my family. I've seen God show up in my friends, in my relationships, in my relationship with God, and at school or whatever it is. But some of you, you might be like, man, I just don't know. I just don't know. I haven't seen God show up in a lot of different ways. Let me say this. That if that's the case for you, and you can't think of a story where God has showed up in your life, it could very well be that your house has been built on sand up to this point. That your house has not been built on the rock. So what I want you to do, for those of you who can't come up with a story, maybe it's time for you to have a conversation with your small group leader, and for you to ask them, hey, how can I start to have my house built on the rock as opposed to on the sand? Because I can't think of any stories where God has showed up. But for those of you who have a story, I want you to try and come up with at least 3 different stories from 3 different hashtags. And I want you to, as soon as you're done, as soon as small group time is over and we dismiss you from middle school, I want you to go out and I want you to post your story underneath the hashtag that is provided out on the warehouse wall, so that we can see all the different ways that God has showed up. But if you can't come up with a story, first of all, ask your small group leaders to help you, because they are here to help you and they want to help you succeed with this, because they want you to see and identify all the different ways that God has helped you, and so that you can begin to say, oh man, I never realized it, but God really has been a part of my life. I have had some ups and downs in my life, but God has helped me through. But for those of you who haven't, for those of you who maybe today for the first time you've realized that your house has been built on the sand, all you need to do is talk to your small group leader and say, I don't want my house to be built on the sand anymore. I want to be like the wise man who built his house on the rock. Because the only way that we're going to live an epic story is if we build our house on the rock of Jesus Christ. So right now I want you to break up into your small groups, and your goal is to write at least 3 or more stories on the poster story stickers, and then I want you to move forward with that. And I want you to go ahead as soon as the service is over, and I want you to post them underneath the hashtag outside the warehouse wall, on the warehouse wall, so that we can all hear your stories. So let me pray for you, and then you will be dismissed. Father, thank you for today. Thank you for this opportunity for us to be together in the warehouse. And I just pray that as we think through the different ways that you have worked in our lives, that we can see all the different ways that you have really shown up. And God, I pray that these different stories, these different stories that we're going to write out on these cards would really just start to flow out of our minds and out of our hearts and onto these stickers, so that we can share with other people just all the amazing ways that you have shown up. And so, God, I pray all this in your holy name. Amen. All right, you all are dismissed to your small groups. Have a great time. Try and come up with at least 3 things, and then post them on the warehouse wall as soon as you're done.